Welcome to MMA on the Rocks. My name is Bill Welker. You are listening to episode 172 of the podcast. Today is Sunday, January 19th. Man, I'm freezing up right now. I'm so excited to do this podcast right now. If you're wondering what happened to episode 171, it was recorded, but it has not been seen by anyone because I did not upload it. I recorded it last week with my brother Rob in Orlando. We were at a hotel somewhere outside of Disney World, very intoxicated, smoking cigars, making our predictions for UFC 246, which happened to be very accurate. I'm debating whether or not to share this episode with the world. If there's enough demand for it, I will upload it. It was a 15-minute episode that was recorded during the completion of a 100 proof bottle of bourbon between my brother and myself. Needless to say, it was a shit show. But that's neither here nor there. If you want to hear the episode, then you need to demand it as the MMA on the Rocks audience. Before we get into UFC 246, let me introduce my co-host, who you may or may not remember because he has been around since last decade, all the way from New Jersey, fresh off of bowling a 300 game, I think. Jeff, the animal Wilson. Jeff, how are you feeling on this almost midnight on Sunday evening, my friend?
Yeah, man, it's closer to Martin Luther King Day than it is to Saturday. So there's that. Excited to have the day off. Excited for a chance to kind of just reflect on where civil rights has come. I think Martin Luther King, a big proponent of that, and the way he protested without hurting anybody was something special, man. You don't see that anymore, especially nowadays. Everybody's violent. Everybody loses their temper very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Bill, I'm excited to be back on the show with you. Any thoughts on Martin Luther King Day, or should we just get right into it? I'm cool either way.
Yeah, man. I do. I think MLK was a really powerful figure, and he had a lot of great ideas that really still resonate today. And I wish they would resonate a little bit more, because I think he would be disappointed if he saw the behavior of some people abusing the freedoms that he fought so hard for everybody to have. I think we take advantage of that very much. We see so often like people arguing over petty things on the internet, and just because they have a voice, they feel like they can just rant and rave about whatever they want, and they kind of lose sight about what's really important, like the things that MLK was fighting for. Not even very long ago.
Yeah.
So I think we need to do our part to remind people, since we have this platform, that you kind of need to choose what's worth fighting for. And I think MLK definitely had the right idea about that. And maybe the rest of us need to take a deep dive into what really is worth fighting for. And speaking of fighting, let's talk about some mixed martial arts here, Jeff, I gotta air something out here, because I talked to some mutual friends about the last time you bailed on the episode, people who you and I both know, and nobody's buying the excuse, Jeff, why you stood me up. So we got to clear the air here, Jeff. Why'd you miss out on the last episode here?
Yeah, Bill, I'll be honest with you, man. Last minute, a parent of a student of mine asked me to fill out an application that was time sensitive, and it was a stupid format. It wasn't saving on my computer, so I had to leave my house and go somewhere to like print this shit out. So it was kind of messy. It was super last minute. Um, and I apologize, Bill. I didn't let you know until the last minute that I couldn't be on the show. But yeah, I have a couple of students who are applying to high schools, applying to other private schools. So they're asking for some letters of recommendation because now, like the end of January, is when they want to get all their stuff together so that they can send out decisions and whatnot. I'll be honest with you, Bill. It's a giant pain in the ass.
I remember those days, Jeff. So I can sympathize for sure. And yet I brought you back, Jeff. I can't quit you, Jeff. It's like Brokeback Mountain without all the cowboy butt stuff.
But we're back in the game. And of course I'm happy to do it, at least for the good kids. But yeah, try to help out whenever I can. I go some of my students are in like plays and stuff, so I try to go watch those on occasion, when I can, and the kids appreciate it because it's just the guy I am, Bill.
That's it. You gotta do
And
what you gotta do. You
and
gotta be
speaking
there.
of yeah, yeah, and
Let me hear
speaking
this
of being
transition. Let's do it.
speaking of being there and doing what you got to do, Bill, I think that the real winner of last night's main card was Conor McGregor's left shoulder, man.
Yeah, a lot of people talking about the shoulder strikes. So UFC 246 from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada saw the return of Conor McGregor after 460 days away from the octagon. And it only took him 40 seconds to dispatch Donald Cowboy Cerrone. So my assessment, Jeff, he came in and he was looking for the flying knee, much like Jorge Masvidal did to Ben Askren. He was looking to run out there and throw the flying knee. Cowboy immediately grabbed an underhook and went to prevent the knee. But he didn't get deep enough on the underhook. And I talk about this a lot, Jeff. I occasionally coach some wrestling classes here. The difference between an overhook and an underhook is who's controlling. So if I'm clamping down with an overhook, I have an overhook, you have nothing. If I'm deep on an underhook, I have an underhook, you have nothing. And that's a very important distinction and something that an untrained eye wouldn't notice about this particular situation. So after failing with the flying knee, Conor grabs an overhook and clamps down on it. Before Cowboy could succeed with getting that underhook. He then gets bicep control. I'm huge on bicep control, Jeff. You probably know this about me. If you have a hook on one side and you want to prevent somebody from getting something on the other side, bicep control is crucial because you can control the entire side of the body by controlling the bicep. So he used that overhook for leverage to throw that left shoulder all the way across Cowboy's face to his left eye. I believe he landed 3 shoulder strikes or so, made Cowboy start bleeding from the nose. His eye started to swell up. That was the beginning of the end. He hit him with a head kick up against the cage, but I don't think that was the nail in the coffin. I think it was the 3 left hands that Cowboy took on the way to the ground. That was really the end of the night for him and seemed to seal the deal. And Herb Dean was just kind of waiting for a Cowboy to pretty much lose all signs of life at that point. But really a beautiful display of mixed martial arts by Conor McGregor. It was really hard to consume at one time and live. And just before we went on here, I watched the entire fight, maybe 5 or 6 times, just to kind of digest each detail because there was a lot going on here in this 40-second main event. But give me your thoughts, Jeff, and give me your thoughts just on the technicality of Conor McGregor in his return after 460 days away from the octagon here.
Yeah, man. I'll be honest with you. I was surprised. I know Conor McGregor can fight, but after such a long time away and putting on some extra muscle to fight at 170, well, excuse me, I thought he was going to gas out. I thought that he'd be a little bit slower because of the extra muscle on him. But he looked great in there, man. Not a lot happened in those 40 seconds, but there was so much to dissect in there. Like you said, the overhook being super effective, and Conor McGregor making use of that overhook and pulling Donald Cerrone, not just using his shoulder to strike Donald Cerrone, but pulling Cerrone into those strikes. Kind of like how DC pulls people down into his uppercuts,
Mm-hmm.
And McGregor's takedown offense was good. His counter to Cerrone coming in was that flying knee, and it didn't land, but the fact that he was able to read that takedown like that, I think speaks volumes. I
Mm-hmm.
think that Cerrone was not ready for Conor McGregor's timing here. I think he's packing a lot more power. The way that his body is just composed in this particular fight, he looked massive. He didn't look like that when he fought Nate Diaz at 170 the first
Mm-hmm.
time. Here, Conor McGregor, he was really filled out with his frame, really muscular, and he carried a lot more power into this welterweight division than he did against Nate Diaz the first time. Masterful performance by him. Donald Cerrone is no slouch. He's a great fighter, a legend in this sport, and for McGregor to do that to him, I'm not a fan of Conor McGregor, but I got to give credit where it's due, man. He did a great job last night.
Yeah, it really was, like you said, masterful. And he had a great game plan. It's no secret that Cowboy Cerrone is a slow starter, as they say. So Connor did the right thing. He swarmed him early. He looked for the early finish. That strategy has failed him in the past, like the first time he fought Nate Diaz. And I'd say even the second time he fought Nate Diaz, he was still looking for that knockout. And maybe at that point in time didn't carry the same kind of power into the 170-pound division because Connor's not a big guy. I mean, he walks around at like 165 pounds. He's very muscular and very shredded. But remember, he's not one of these guys. He's not one of these welterweights that's cutting down from 195 pounds. He pretty much walks around at this weight. So, his success against Cowboy, I can understand because we know Cowboy has been super active. He's taken a lot of damage in his last couple of fights. Even his last win against Aleksei was a 5-round war. And, he fought a couple of months after that. And I remember Aleksei saying, he was watching Cowboy's next fight and he was still sore from the fight with Cowboy. They were in the same fight. They took pretty much the same amount of damage, and Cowboy got right back in there and took 2 consecutive knockouts to Justin Gaethje and Tony Ferguson. And in the Tony Ferguson fight, we saw that orbital area, that facial area of Cowboy swell up enormously. So we know that those bones are pretty tenderized in there. So maybe those shoulder strikes were really hard from Conor. Or maybe, Cowboy's face isn't completely healed, or some combination of the two. And the shoulder strikes have been a big part of the conversation from a lot of people today. This is not a new technique, guys. We saw Randy Couture doing this back in the day. We've seen Nate Diaz doing this. Typically, it's a technique that's used up against a cage. We haven't seen it very often out in the open like this. And we haven't seen it thrown with such ferocity. And the fact that he was throwing crosses with his shoulder was something a little bit unique. John Jones is another one that comes to mind that has used the shoulder strikes in the past. But again, it's usually something that's used in a cage clinch up against the cage. So that's what was a little bit different about it. But as far as it being a new technique, this is nothing new. And it shouldn't have surprised anybody, but it was really effective. It happened early on in the fight, and this is a very high profile fight that it happened in. As for Cowboy, I'd like to see him take a little bit of time off, heal up. He had a rough 2019. He was very active, as he is every year. But he's starting to take a little bit more damage, and I'm a fan of Cowboy. I love the way he fights. I'm a fan of the way Conor fights as well. Um, I'll leave it at that. I'm not a fan of his antics outside of the cage, and we try to avoid talking about those things here on the show. But as far as his abilities as a mixed martial artist, I think he's phenomenal. I think he's definitely one of a kind. And his ability to market fights is one of a kind as well. So I'd like to see Cowboy kind of sit out for a little bit, at least a good 6 to 8 months here. As for Conor, he looked great. He was in great shape. He came in, he had a quick performance. He could turn around really fast. There's a couple of different options that are being thrown around out there. Jorge Masvidal is one of them. This would not be a title fight, obviously, because Jorge Masvidal is not a champion. And then there's the winner of Tony versus Khabib, which is taking place in Brooklyn in April.
Yep.
Yeah. So that would be a long layoff for Conor. I mean, it would be a smart choice, I guess, marketing wise, if you put him, give him a title shot. But just thinking about the calendar here. All right, so it's mid-January now, February, March, April, 3 months until the Tony Ferguson-Khabib fight happens. And then if Khabib wins, he likes to take a long time off in between fights. We might be looking at like September, Jeff, before we see Conor McGregor back in there. If Tony Ferguson wins, we might be looking at May because Tony Ferguson will turn right around and fight immediately. But I think you got to strike while the iron is hot here and schedule something for Conor. So maybe the Jorge Masvidal fight makes sense. From what I understand, Kamaru Usman was also mentioned. I know he was present cage side last night, but I think he's dealing with some injuries right now. So I think that fight is off the table. I don't think that's the fight to make in either case. So let's just say it's the winner of Khabib, Ferguson, or Jorge Masvidal. Jeff, what would you like to see next for Conor McGregor?
Bill, your marketing brain is starting to rub off on me here because I think that the fight that's going to put the most money in these guys' pockets is McGregor versus Masvidal, man. Masvidal won the baddest motherfucker championship not too long ago. Was it super exciting? No, because of the way it ended, but the fight was very exciting. His fight before that, it was super exciting as well when he knocked out Ben Askren. So I think that it now's the time to schedule that fight, to book that fight with Conor McGregor. They're both coming off of huge wins. They're both building up a head of steam here, and put the baddest motherfucker belt on the line. Who cares? Yeah, is it a real belt? No, but it's entertaining. And listen, if it was being done in Brooklyn, my ass would be buying a ticket. So let's make it happen. I think this is the money fight to make. That's just my marketing brain because, I don't think the UFC is going to want to wait here for a McGregor's win to get stale, so to speak. It's fresh in people's minds. Book it in like within the next 2 weeks, Masvidal versus McGregor. Have it be the headliner somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they got the next couple of weeks planned out. Here's the only problem, Jeff. If you're thinking about marketing, remember Conor McGregor does have a little bit of control here. So if that's the fight he wanted to happen, he could have easily set it up last night, and he chose not to because Jorge Masvidal was cage side, and Conor could have called him out and said, I just broke the UFC record. I have knockouts in 3 different weight divisions now, which is true. He has knockouts at featherweight, lightweight, and welterweight now. I want that bad motherfucker title. Let's do it, Jorge. Jorge's sitting right there, but he didn't. And because he didn't do that, makes me think that's not what he has in mind for his next move. But he also said he wants to fight 3 times in 2020. And because he said that, and Conor typically when it comes to fighting, when he says he's going to do something, he does it. So if he wants to fight 3 times in 2020, it's not really realistic for his next move to be the winner of Ferguson and Khabib, because that would put you into the fall, pretty close to the end of the year. Why would he take that much time off? So my guess is he wants to fight early summertime, but he doesn't want to fight Jorge Masvidal. Kamaru Usman's kind of out of the picture. The winner of Ferguson Khabib might be too soon for them. There's always Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz coming off a loss. But I feel like that trilogy fight will always sell. So that's a possibility to keep in mind. He didn't mention Nate Diaz by name. But I see, if I'm trying to think like Conor McGregor, I'm thinking maybe fight Nate Diaz. If you win that fight, make it at 155 pounds this time. They're one apiece at 170. Make it at 155. And then if he gets past Nate Diaz early summertime, he'll be ready for that rematch with Khabib or a fight with Tony Ferguson for the belt early fall. That's kind of where my mind is going with it right now. It's just an idea. I'm just kind of brainstorming here, Jeff, but give me your thoughts.
Yeah, all good ideas. I really like that Nate Diaz trilogy fight. But Bill, something that was interesting that Conor McGregor said last night was, "I'll even fight the guy behind the desk," which I took to mean, and so did the announcers, that he meant Paul Felder. I think that's a great fight to make. I think stylistically it's very interesting because they're both stand-up guys. I feel like, Felder's striking is a little bit more complete because he mixes it up. He goes for the body. He goes for your legs too. But Conor, you can say the same for Conor. So I thought that was interesting. But I don't know the reasoning behind him saying that. It's not really a money fight. I love Paul Felder, but he's not a big draw. So I was a little confused as to why he would say that. Or maybe, do you think maybe he's thinking a tune-up fight in waiting for Khabib versus Ferguson's decision here? What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if maybe he's calling out Joe Rogan or John Anik or Ariel
DC.
Helwani, Chael Sonnen. There's a lot of people who sit behind desks. And Conor tends to be very cryptic with things like that, which is brilliant on his part because it keeps people talking about him and it keeps people distracted from his more, unsavory behaviors. I don't know, man. There's a lot of options. I'm kind of at the point where, he had a great performance. If he books another fight, I'll look forward to it. But we could kind of leave the speculation at that. But yeah, Paul Felder's an interesting choice. He does have a fight coming up with Dan Hooker, I believe. So that's no easy task for anybody. He's got to get through that. But yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up. But until there's something a little more solid, I guess we could leave the Conor speculation at that. You want to move on to the rest of this card here?
Yeah, because Bill, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't too excited for the rest of this card. But watching it was a fantastic card, and I think the UFC hit it out of the park here.
Yeah, it was very subtle. There wasn't a lot of build up to this, and we had a lot of time off. First card of 2020, so there was definitely a lot of anticipation here. That's the word I was looking for. It's late, Jeff. I meant to tell you this. So I got home from watching the fights last night around 2:00 in the morning. My buddy Matt ordered the fights at his place, and I get home and my daughter, who just turned 2 last week, happy birthday, Ariana. Daddy loves you very, very much. But he's gonna talk a little bit of shit right now because I got home around 2 a.m., Jeff, and this kid vomited all over the bed. And then it was up. I mean, I feel bad for her, obviously. She was up for another hour or so, had a fever. Couldn't get her to take any Tylenol because she was throwing it up. So something upset her stomach, or she had a little virus, and she bounced back today. Back to her normal self, like kind of joking around as toddlers do. But yeah, man, 2 a.m. I was looking to just eh, I get a little bit wired watching the fights, but at the same time, I'm a busy guy, so I like to, when it's that late, like I gotta crash, and came home to a vomiting toddler with a fever, and she was still up. She was still up at 7 a.m. Jeff. So she's a little miracle. She can she can vomit and have a fever all night and still wake up early. So that's where we're at with this, Jeff. That's the story I was starting to tell you at the beginning of the episode, but that's where I'm at right now, and it is now 11 p.m. on Sunday night, and I guarantee she'll be up before 7 tomorrow morning, so I have that to look forward to. But yeah, that's these are the blessings I'm dealing with the terrible twos here, Jeff.
Yeah, well, enjoy it while you can, Bill, because my nephew's turning 10 next in March, and I can't believe a decade's flown by, man. It feels like just yesterday I was holding this kid. But yeah, man, happy birthday, Ariana. Uncle Jeff couldn't be there, so I sent you a giant teddy bear that it turns out you enjoy.
Yes.
Yeah.
She loves the giant teddy bear. Thank you for that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm gonna order one for my niece too. Probably for her birthday coming up. But yeah, man. Bill, such is the life of a dad. You don't get days off, you don't get sick days, you don't get paid leave. So
no.
and
Never.
you're on
In fact,
call.
you have to pay to leave. You have to pay. In some cases, like if you actually leave, like for good, you have to pay child support. But like if you want to leave, like a good father leaves, you pay a responsible babysitter, which, the more responsible they are, the less cheap they are. So that's what we're working with here. But yeah, just to paint a picture, the teddy bear that Uncle Jeff sent, it came in a package. For those of you watching on YouTube, it came in a package about this big, maybe like a foot and a half by a foot and a half, and but it's vacuum sealed. So I open up this bag, and I made a video of this, Jeff, but I don't know if you can tell from the video. I open up the bag, and this thing expands into like a 4 foot tall fucking gigantic teddy bear. That's at least double to 3 times the size of my daughter, and she's hugging this thing and like dragging it around. Luckily, she knows how to use her underhooks already. But yeah, it was awesome. And then we took the kiddo to Disney World with her grandparents for her birthday. We had a good time. We went to Magic Kingdom. I had to sneak a massive amount of alcohol into the Magic Kingdom, Jeff, because it's not available. Out of all the 4 Disney parks here at Disney World, it's the one place where you cannot purchase alcohol, which is detrimental to someone like myself, who needs alcohol to be around, big crowds or small crowds or no crowds. I just need alcohol. In any case, I have mastered sneaking alcohol into Disney World, but Magic Kingdom is the one place you can't just go and buy a beer anywhere. They only sell beer and wine at like sit down restaurants where you need a reservation like 10 years in advance, I think. But luckily, Kraken rum is the same color as Coke Zero. which, you are allowed to bring sodas and waters and stuff into the park. So I had like 6 bottles full of Kraken rum that were brought into Magic Kingdom. Disney is probably listening to this right now and figuring out a way to change their policies. I hope not, because somehow the wife talked me into getting an annual pass to Disney World since we live in Florida. In any case, Jeff, we've gotten so far off track. Let's talk about the co-main event here, which was a rematch between Holly Holm and Raquel Pennington. Didn't go much differently from the first fight. The first fight was a split decision in favor of Holly Holm. This was a unanimous decision in favor of Holly Holm. We saw some good tricks from Holly Holm here. She controlled a vast majority of this fight, kind of as expected. I don't have a whole lot on this one, Jeff. So if you want to take the reins here, or we can just move on.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like a lot of the same. I actually thought Raquel Pennington won the first fight, and this time around, it was definitely all Holly Holm. She did such a good job controlling Pennington, pinning her up against the cage. I don't have much more to say from that to that extent, because Holly Holm went out there and did what she does.
Yeah,
She's a world beater.
Some good cage grappling from her. I mean, nothing that really stands out, but it's a check mark in the win column for Holly Holm here, which she kind of desperately needs, because I think she lost 5 of her last 7, something like that. And I think 8 of those last 7 were title shots.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah, she's a monster, man.
Speaking of monsters, Aleksei Oleinik and his relentless grappling prevailed over Maurice Greene. Credit to Maurice Greene for hanging in there as long as he did, but Oleinik just clung to him and was just like a fungus or something that refused to be cured. He just latched on to Maurice Greene. Whatever he could grab a hold of, he was trying to strangle or remove from his body, and finally wound up locking up an arm bar close to the end of round 2. And Maurice Greene did a good job defending it. He had his knee blocking the extension of the arm, but Oleinik cleared that knee and was able to extend that arm. But in the meantime, Maurice Greene got out of some nasty chokes. A lot of positions that probably Oleinik finishes 9 out of 10 heavyweights if he gets them in those positions. Here's a guy who's a very unorthodox grappler, very experienced mixed martial artist. He calls himself a wrestler. This guy's got like 70 MMA fights. I thought it was a spectacular finish in this fight, and probably one that's not going to get talked about enough in the coming weeks, because of all the Conor McGregor hoopla. But give me your thoughts on this heavyweight bout, Jeff.
Yeah, this fight was awesome, dude. It was so fast paced for a heavyweight fight. Excuse me. Maurice Greene landed some really hard shots in the opening of the first round, and then it was all Aleksei Oleinik from there, man. Using his grappling really well, and like you said, credit to Maurice Greene getting out of some really bad spots, man. There was this one choke in there that I thought for sure Maurice Greene was going out. It looked like an anaconda choke. I thought Greene was going to tap, and it looked like he was very close to getting out of the armbar, but Aleksei Oleinik, just so much experience, knew what he had to do, and as soon as he felt Maurice Greene try to pull his arm out, that's when Oleinik cranked that armbar super tight. Greene had very little choice but to tap. But great job from him holding off Aleksei Oleinik. That is a tough task. Maurice Greene is a super tough dude here.
Yeah, man, for sure. A great finish for Oleinik, and really showing some diversity, because a lot of his finishes in the UFC have been chokes, and pulling off the armbar here against Maurice Greene. Jeff's just making me laugh because he he mutes his microphone to yawn. But I'm just thinking about how those of you watching on YouTube can see both of us at all times now. It doesn't switch back and forth anymore.
Yeah, but I don't want them to hear my yawns when they go to download our podcast as they normally do.
I know. A majority of the audience is audio. I'd say a good 98% of the audience is audio. But for those 2%ers that are here on YouTube, you can see what I'm seeing right now. It's Jeff's big black bear yawns.
Hey, listen, bowling took a lot out of me, man.
Yeah.
It's been a long day.
Well, you're out of podcasting shape, Jeff. You haven't done it in a decade.
Yeah, I'm out of practice, man.
So Brian Kelleher and Ode Osbourne were on the main card for some reason that I can't figure out.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too.
I mean,
man.
I guess it makes sense because, like, maybe you want to use Roxanne Modafferi and Macy Barber to kind of highlight the prelims to get people to order the pay-per-view. But I think that fight should have been on the main card, definitely deserving of it. But Brian Kelleher, guillotine victory over Ode Osbourne, who's coming off Dana White's Contender Series and looked good on there. But I don't know why he would go from that to fighting on the main card of, the kickoff pay-per-view of 2020. It just doesn't make sense to me. But credit to Brian Kelleher. He looked good in this fight, and he got a guillotine finish. He's got a good guillotine. Any thoughts on this one, Jeff?
Yeah, man, I thought Brian Kelleher looked great in there. Just using a very aggressive wrestling style. He was in Osbourne's face. He was, his pace was relentless. Ode Osbourne, he didn't know what to do, man. He looked like a dolphin being attacked by 3 great white sharks. He was lost in there. And Brian Kelleher just smothered him, man. And he was not nice about that guillotine. He had him sitting and had his arm cinched in as well. So, Osbourne was forced to tap with his feet because of how that guillotine was locked up. It was an arm-in guillotine. The other arm was trapped somewhere in there as well. I guess he was trying to give some more space for his neck. But yeah. Brian Kelleher had just such a tight squeeze, man. I felt bad for Osbourne in there.
Yeah. I forgot about that, actually. Thanks for reminding me that his other arm was trapped as well. He had a tap with his foot. Not something you see very often. So, credit to Brian Kelleher, real tight guillotine. He looked good in there. Diego Ferreira. So last week in the episode I mentioned earlier that has not been seen by anyone and may never be seen by anyone, I said that this was a dangerous fight for Anthony Pettis because Ferreira is a relatively unknown fighter.
Yeah.
For people who are just tuning in to watch Conor McGregor, or just tuning in to watch Cowboy Cerrone or Holly Holm, and they recognize a couple of names on here. They probably know Anthony Pettis. He was on the Wheaties box 5-6 years ago, whatever it was. He's got that highlight reel Showtime kick that we see every time he fights. And people probably know Anthony Pettis. Probably 95% of the people who know who Anthony Pettis is don't know who Diego Ferreira is. And he's a fucking monster. Not only is he a fucking monster, but he probably had his most impressive performance of his career against Anthony Pettis and getting they're calling it a rear naked choke. It was more, and Joe Rogan was calling it a neck crank. But there was not really a crank of the neck because Pettis's head wasn't turning. It was more of a neck crush. So it wasn't a choke. It wasn't a crank. He was kind of off to the side of Pettis a little bit and just crushing his neck. Not on the carotid arteries where it would, cut off the blood flow to the brain, but just a pain pressure on the neck that forced Anthony Pettis to tap. And we know how tough Anthony Pettis is. Very impressed by Diego Ferreira last night. He was using a Muay Thai technique that's actually very common, where he was kind of lifting his lead leg and throwing like a fake teep and using that to slide in and close the distance. And he had said at the end of the fight that it wasn't something he was practicing, but he took some hard leg kicks from Pettis, and he didn't want to take those anymore. But that is actually a very common Muay Thai tactic where you kind of feint the teep, lift that lead leg, and use that to slide in and close that distance. And I was really impressed by the way he used that to kind of stifle Anthony Pettis, because Pettis is a guy, if you give him an inch, he takes a mile. You have to make him claustrophobic to be successful against him, and that's exactly what Ferreira did, and coming away with a very unorthodox submission victory. Give me your thoughts, Jeff.
Yeah, man, the submission was super interesting. It looked like a neck crank to me, but that's just how I was processing it, because I didn't think it didn't look like a choke. So to me, that's what I was calling it, a neck crank. But a neck crush, I guess, makes more sense. But anyway, kind of an unorthodox submission, looked interesting. And Bill, I was impressed with Ferreira here because Pettis looked so good in the first round. He was picking his shots, beating up that lead leg of Ferreira. When Ferreira went for the takedown, Pettis either stuffed it or he popped right back up. And, it was looking good after that first round. And Ferreira in the second round just drove in for the takedown. The single leg wasn't really working, so he ran the pipe instead, which I loved. I love seeing that takedown. I feel like not enough people use that takedown effectively. And then he just went to work on the ground, and it looked like Pettis was okay. I was actually a little surprised when I saw him tap, but I was not in the submission, so I can't tell you what he was feeling. Obviously Pettis is a tough dude. He's tapped some tough dudes, so if he tapped, he had to be in a lot of discomfort here. A great showing from Ferreira.
Yeah, for sure. And it was an even greater showing, Jeff?
Give it to me, Bill.
The fucking domination of Macy Barber by Roxanne, the Happy Warrior Modafferi. This is by far the best Roxanne Modafferi we have seen in the UFC. She was fighting like a woman possessed in there against, I think, an 1,100 point favorite in Macy Barber. And I wish I were a gambling man, Jeff, because I would have definitely put money on Roxanne in this fight, just because of the experience factor and the fact that we haven't seen Macy Barber tested. Roxanne dominated, and I think Macy, she kind of grabbed the microphone and started subtly trying to make excuses.
Yeah.
At the end, where she was like, "Oh, don't worry about my knee." It's like, you're on the fucking prelims. Like, sit down. You just got dominated. Like, you should have lost 2 rounds 10-8.
Oh yeah.
And
Absolutely.
only one, by the way, only one judge gave a 10-8 round for Roxanne in this fight, which is the only travesty that's a part of this fight. And I will admit, I'm biased here, because Roxanne's best friend, training partner, roommate, Serena De Jesus, is a good friend of the show, the Southpaw Outlaw, Serena Southpaw, on social media, if you want to go and follow her. But yeah, don't take them. Like, who the fuck are you? Don't grab the microphone after losing the fight and say like, "Oh yeah, I know my knee was injured," but the real the real star of this fight, though, Jeff, is the doctor who came in. Yeah. I think between the second and third rounds, he sits Macy Barber down against the fence. He massages her knee for a second, and he goes to the referee. "She's got a partial ACL tear. She's gonna be fine." And then he walks out.
I didn't hear that. I saw him look up at the ref. I didn't hear what he said to him though.
Yeah, he looks
at
him
awesome.
Just like this, and he goes, "She's got a partial ACL tear. She's gonna be fine." and then like snaps away, does like a supermodel like runway turnaround. Like,
The
wait,
Zoolander.
first of all, do you have fucking X-ray vision? How do like even if you could tell like her ACL is torn, how do you know it's partial, and how do you know she's gonna be fine? Like she can barely stand on it. Like I'm not a doctor, Jeff, but I can tell she was hurt pretty bad. Like just like the confidence and the fucking like first of all, you sitting her down against the cage and massaging her knee and looking at it, which is a clear sign to her opponent that's fucking 15 feet away, watching everything you're doing, that she has an injured left knee. Like, what, I want to know. I want to have this doctor on the show and find out what the fuck was he thinking. Does he have X-ray vision? And was he ever a runway model? Because all of these are questions that I need answers to, Jeff. But in any case, Macy Barber, she showed her toughness, and Roxanne Modafferi showed a lot of courtesy by not attacking that injured leg. And she even made comments after the fight that she said she could have kicked it, but she knew that it was probably a ligament injury, and she didn't want to injure it further, and she knew she was winning the fight, and she chose not to attack that injured leg. Jeff, 100 out of 100 other fighters would be trying to knee bar Macy Barber or leg kick her or something. That just makes me like Roxanne even more than I already do. The fact that she was looking for a way to still win the fight without doing permanent damage to her opponent. I can't say that I would even be so kind in there, Jeff. If I saw that X-ray vision runway model referee sitting my opponent down and massaging their knee, I'd be like, that's the knee I gotta go after right now. But Roxanne didn't do that. She's not that person, and still came out with a victory, a dominant victory over a really hot prospect who was a really big favorite over her. Give me your thoughts on this fight, Jeff.
Bill, absolutely amazed with Roxanne Modafferi's performance here. And like you said, Serena De Jesus, friend of the show. So I was a little biased too. I wanted Roxanne Modafferi to do well. But Bill, I was concerned. Macy Barber's a tough chick, undefeated. And Roxanne Modafferi went in there and kicked the shit out of her. Mm-hmm. For lack of a better term. I think rounds 2 and 3 easily could have been 10-8s.
I agree.
Easily. And Modafferi just put it in work, man. Everything was with purpose. The groundwork was superb. She had Macy Barber on her back, and while Barber was able to get a few sweeps in, there was never a time where Modafferi was not in control here. Mm-hmm. Very, very impressed, especially when you consider the age gap. Roxanne Modafferi's 37, Macy Barber's like 22 or something. So, just huge feather in Roxy's hat. Huge feather in Roxy's cap here, because Macy Barber, a big rising star here, definitely making a splash in the women's flyweight division. But also Roxy was just so composed, man. She never lost her cool in there. There was never a time where she wasn't picking her shots, even when she had Barber on the ropes. Mm-hmm. In the third round, she was methodical. She was diligent, just chipping away at her. I want to see more of that from her. Just a phenomenal fight.
Yeah, man. She's a grinder,
Oh, yeah.
And it showed. And, that strength and conditioning program she's been going through over there at Syndicate has really paid dividends. And she cut up that forehead, man.
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot of blood spurting out. A doctor could have stopped that just based on the blood loss. They could have stopped it based on the X-ray vision ACL tear. Credit to Macy Barber for hanging in there. But, that forehead got busted up, man. That big old forehead of hers. You could project a drive-in movie on that.
Dude, if you hung her off a crane, you could tear down a building, man. That wrecking ball head that she's got.
I think in like when they show the tail of the tape, like the top of her hair bun is actually a quarter of a mile from her chin. there's a, there's a lot of forehead in between there. In any case, one of the best fights of the night, in my opinion, Sadiq Youssef, unanimous decision victory over Andre Fili. But these guys were fucking going after it, Jeff. It was so back and forth. The grappling exchanges. I was surprised to see Sadiq Youssef showing off some grappling here because we know he's a really good, really rigid and really precise striker. And he showed off a lot of that as well. But in the grappling exchanges, he was doing well against a seasoned MMA fighter like Andre Fili. Really impressed with Sadiq Youssef. This was a very close fight. They both had their moments in here, but Youssef coming away with the unanimous decision. Thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, Bill, I'm with you 100%. For me, this was the fight of the night. I knew it was going to be a good night of fights seeing this fight. And after the first round, part of me wanted to finish, but the rest of me was like, I hope they go all 3 rounds at this pace. And they did, man. Neither one disappointed. I think it could have gone either way. Personally, I think Youssef won for me, but I could have seen it going for Andre Fili, and I would not have been upset. So back and forth. Heading into the 3rd round, they were a round apiece. I couldn't tell you who won this fight. I was thinking Youssef, but I didn't know if they would give it to Fili. Everything about this fight was great. The stand-up, the grappling, and Youssef hung in tough, man. Andre Fili was throwing up submissions from the bottom and, had a very, very active guard, which, it's scary to be able to fight someone and they're able to just attack you while they're on their back. It's tough for somebody to deal with, especially if your whole game is top game. Andre Fili, such a well-rounded grappler, and Youssef went toe-to-toe with him. If you didn't watch this fight, definitely go back and watch it. And even if you did watch it, go back and watch it again. This was a real gem. I think this was, for me, this was fight of the night here.
For sure. I didn't check the bonuses to see. I imagine Conor got one.
Yeah. Oleinik got one. I got the Wikipedia page open. Brian Kelleher, Diego Ferreira, and Drew Dober. So there's no fight of the night awarded.
Yeah. So Drew Dober definitely deserves it with the the quick first round knockout of Nasrat Haqparast. So let's just switch. Let's just skip over to that one real quick. So Nasrat Haqparast, who is the Kelvin Gastelum doppelganger, was a huge favorite in this fight and tried to make Drew Dober brawl a little bit, and Drew Dober wasn't having it. He stayed composed in those wild exchanges and wound up landing a straight left about a minute into the first round that just dropped Haqparast, and the referee Mark Smith had to step in there, call an end to it very wisely because Haqparast was taking some serious brain damage there. Drew Dober looked phenomenal, definitely deserving of a performance of the night bonus. And then Askar Askarov killed Tim Elliott in the first round. Tim Elliott was fighting as a zombie for the 2nd and 3rd rounds and still managed to have some moments in this fight. Didn't come close to winning it. Got his fucking ass beat. Kept walking into big punches from Askarov and asking for more. And Askarov gave him more. And Elliott thought that just walking forward and asking for more punishment would do enough to win him the fight. But he wasn't returning any of these strikes. I can't really understand the strategy from Tim Elliott here. Maybe it was like a Homer Simpson approach, like trying to tire him out by taking all of his punches. In any case, it was a fun fight to watch. Yeah. Any thoughts on either of those, Jeff?
I'm actually watching the Drew Dober versus Nasrat Haqparast fight on my phone right now. But Askar Askarov versus Tim Elliott. This was a really good fight too. This was actually the first fight that I caught on this card, and the whole undercard was great too. Top to bottom, this card was really good. But Bill, Askarov versus Tim Elliott, really enjoyable fight. And I think that they both, at the end of this fight, looked like Sloth from the Goonies. So there's that.
Yeah. Yeah, they both took some lumps, man. So the only other thing I want to mention about this card, because we've been going for almost an hour here and we still have to preview the Fight Night 166 next week. There was a strawweight fight that was called off, and it was between Claudia Gadelha and Aleksei Grasso, because Aleksei Grasso missed weight by 5.5 pounds, Jeff.
That's a whole weight class, dude. Fuck that.
So
fuck that bitch.
Rightfully so, the athletic commission is like, we can't allow this. And credit to Claudia Gadelha. She went and made weight anyway, knowing that her opponent had missed, and still wanted to fight. She still wanted to fight Aleksei Grasso. She's like, yeah, let me in there with this tubby bitch. 5.5 pounds, Jeff. I mean, you're allowed a 1 pound allowance, and that's for like if your scale is off, right? So technically 6.5 pounds she missed by. Let's call it 6.5. And she weighed in without her clothes on. Like, you're like astronomically overweight. Like, what the fuck are you doing? And why are we seeing this problem happen over and over and over again? Fight a weight class up. Move up in weight. In the words of our dear friend, Serena De Jesus, I have no respect for these hoes.
Amen to that, brother.
And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, go to our YouTube channel and look at the highlights playlist. Probably my most shared clip in the history of MMA on the Rocks is Serena De Jesus going on her epic rant about women missing weight and how they have no more excuses than men have. And how herself and Roxanne Modafferi have made weight under the stress of certain biological functions that women go through every month. But yeah, really, really terrible for Claudia Gadelha. But made me a bigger fan of hers. The fact that she wanted to fight Aleksei Grasso, even though she was 5.5 pounds or 6.5 pounds, as we just clarified, overweight. In any case, we're moving along, Jeff, to North Carolina, UFC Fight Night 166. I took a look at this card just before we went live here, and I'm actually looking forward to it. We're getting back to the grind here where we have fight cards, every week now for a couple weeks. Main event, Curtis Blades and Junior Dos Santos. I think this is a really fun heavyweight matchup. Probably has number one contender implications, I would think. Depending on what happens with the Jairzinho Rozenstruik and Francis Ngannou fight that's booked a couple weeks from now. But, the winner of this fight, if impressive in a main event, could make a case for a title shot. Raleigh, North Carolina, the heavyweights are coming. The co-main event, even more intriguing, in my opinion. Rafael Dos Anjos and Michael Chiesa. I think this is a really fun fight. Two guys who have made the journey from lightweight to welterweight. That long 15-pound journey, and have both found a lot of success there. And they've both hit some walls at 170 pounds as well. So give me your thoughts on the main event and co-main event here, Jeff.
I'm excited for both of these, man. I'm a fan of Curtis Blades. I love his wrestling and how he combines with his striking.
Mm-hmm. Might have lost you, Jeff. All right, Jeff the Animal Wilson may have been cut out here. We're going to see if we can get him back. In the meantime, Let's take a look at the rest of this card. Jeff is just frozen on my screen here. I don't know if he can hear me or not. But we can't hear you, Jeff. So Jordan Espinosa and Alex Perez. That'll be a fun fight. Angela Hill, another quick turnaround for her against Hannah Cyphers. And we completely lost Jeff. So I guess he lost his internet there. Jamahal Hill, the undefeated Jamahal Hill against Darko Stosic. That's actually a really fun fight. And then Bevon Lewis, another Dana White Contender Series alumni, against Daquan Townsend. Nick Lentz stepping in on short notice against Arnold Allen. So that's always fun. Justine Kish and Lucy Pudilova. Jeff just texted me and said he lost his Wi-Fi. He's rebooting his laptop right now, folks. So maybe we'll get the animal back in time for him to say goodbye. Montel Jackson against Felipe Diaz Colares. Sarah McMahon and Lena Landsberg. Very underrated fight on this card if you're into the women's MMA. Brett Johns. We haven't seen Brett Johns in a while against Tony Gravely. I'm going to look up real quick when the last time we saw Brett Johns was. Because I feel like it was when he fought Aljamain Sterling, and that seems like it was a really long time ago. Okay, no. He fought Pedro Munoz in August 2018. And he fought Aljamain Sterling in April 2018. So Brett Johns, who came into the UFC on a real hot streak, 3 wins in a row, including that 30-second calf slicer against Joe Soto, which was super impressive. Back at that was the Ultimate Fighter 26 finale, December 2017, and then he had those 2 losses to Aljamain Sterling and Pedro Munoz. Nothing to hang your head at there, and they were both decision losses. So he took a considerable amount of time off since those 2 losses, and the Pikey's coming back. I thought Brett Johns was a really exciting prospect a couple of years ago, and it's interesting that he's taking so much time off, which usually leads me to believe that he's working on things, And then we got the UFC debut of Herbert Burns, the brother of Gilbert Burns, who I still believe is one of the most underrated combat sports athletes on the planet. Gilbert, that is. So Herbert won Dana White's Contender Series in August with an arm triangle in the first round. And he will be taking on Nate Landwehr. And this is the opening fight of the entire card. UFC Fight Night 166. From Raleigh, North Carolina. And my buddy Mike lives up in Raleigh. Wonder if he'll be attending this card in person. So Mike, if you're listening, text me and let me know if you're going to be attending this card. Probably not. Mike doesn't follow UFC very closely. In any case, we really covered a lot this episode, and I want to apologize for the inconsistency the last couple of weeks. We've had a lot of things come up between holidays and sickness and Jeff disappearing and me being too intoxicated to post episodes that I recorded. So again, if you guys want to see episode 171, you're going to have to really break down my door and demand it. It's basically just me and my brother really drunk, smoking cigars, and previewing UFC 246. So if you want to hear those drunken predictions, you're really gonna have to demand those from me. In any case, I guess I'll sign off for myself and the animal. If you want to reach Jeff the Animal Wilson and break his balls for missing the last couple of weeks and for losing internet, Jeff, did you pay your internet bill this month? We're starting off 2020 with a bad start here on Man on the Rocks, but I wouldn't have it any other way. For the record, I've been drinking some Old Forester the entire episode tonight, and probably 5 or 6 hours before the episode started. Old Forester is my go-to right now. They are not an official sponsor of the show, but Old Forester, if you're listening, please sponsor my show because I drink your bourbon quite a bit. I'm drinking the 86 proof right now. I happen to be out of it, which is another good reason to end the show. And anyway, if you want to get a hold of Jeff, it's at animal_Wilson, Twitter and Instagram. You guys know how to get a hold of me, so do it. Reach out to me on social media at MMA on the Rocks, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Send me an email, MMAonTheRocks@gmail.com. Go to our website. Send us a message on the website that comes to my email. We're very accessible, folks. I do always appreciate the feedback that comes from you. I do appreciate when you guys get angry when we miss weeks of doing episodes. Like I say, I'm willing to give all of you a full refund. In fact, a double refund of the money that you paid to listen to this content. In any case, that's it. I've had it with you all. So until next time, cheers, everybody. Goodbye.